After officials in British Columbia announced Monday that they'd be scrapping the time change and permanently adopting year-round daylight saving time, it has many of us wondering, should Alberta follow suit? Yes, this is not a new topic, but it is one that certainly stirs discussion and has some strong feelings behind it. So for more, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Antle with the Department of Psychology at the University of Calgary. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's break this down for viewers. BC will then be in sync with Alberta from November to March, and then Alberta in sync with Saskatchewan from March to November. I think a lot of people are already starting to get confused on all of the different times, and this is part of the discussion. Why not have this universal, at least on the West Coast, be together as one? I just want to get your thoughts on this before we get into things like circadian rhythms and whatnot. This ongoing discussion, you've had many of these interviews before. What are your initial thoughts when you heard about BC?
I'm sort of happy that they're getting rid of the spring forward fallback. So for 30 years, scientists like me have been advocating to get rid of the time change. It's not really a useful practice anymore. And people have really made it clear that they want to get rid of it. But then that leaves us with the question of what is the best time to stick with once we've gotten rid of that time change?
When we do talk about what is the best time to stick with, it's like, what is better, the early morning hours of having that light or getting deep into the day? From your standpoint, your research, what works best?
So the natural time, the one that aligns daylight with our work schedule, where we have the early morning light, the more natural standard time would be the better choice for most jurisdictions. So what they're doing in BC is not what we'd recommend. So the standard time would be better than the daylight time from a health perspective. For Alberta, it's we're going to have two neighbors, neither of which are going to be changing their time. We should stick with one of them for some unique reasons in Alberta, where we have much more northern cities than the other provinces, and the time zone that we follow, we're a little offset from it, that we should actually be sticking with the natural standard time here in Alberta.
Okay, so when we break down when we would potentially see sunrise, as you talked about some of the northern cities, what could we potentially see then? Some of these cities not seeing the sun coming up until what time?
Right. So in Alberta, in Edmonton, in December, the sun rises about 8:30. If we go to permanent year-round daylight time, it would be 9:30. For some of our more western communities, like Grand Prairie, we'd actually find the sunrise on permanent daylight time in December would be around 10:30 in the morning. So really quite late for them. In the summer, the sun's going to be up before anybody else is up, whether you're talking 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. We've got lots of sunlight in the summertime, and sunsets are going to be quite late no matter which option you pick. But the hard part is the winter, and that's why we're suggesting that you really need to stick with having standard time, particularly in the wintertime.
Michael, let's talk about the roots of these time changes, where it all began, and if any of that is relevant today.
So yeah, it goes way back to the early 1900s. The first time that Canada started looking at the spring forward was at the end of the First World War. They did it for a few years there, and then in the end of the Second World War, we did it again. It was to save energy. So the old incandescent light bulbs used to use quite a bit of energy, and by aligning our work schedule in the summer when there's a surplus of daylight, we would not have to turn the lights on so early. Nowadays, we have really energy efficient light bulbs, so we don't really need to do that anymore. And we find that the spring forward actually comes with some acute harm. So that time change that we're going to do this weekend leads to higher rates of accidents. People feel bad for a couple of weeks until the sunlight gets early enough again for them to start feeling good. So it's not a great thing to do, but it could be even worse if you pick the wrong time. And so that's why we're thinking with wintertime, you really have to be mindful of when that sun rises. The human circadian clock needs that early morning light. And it's going to be hard enough on standard time with 8:30 sunrises. It'll be even worse with 9:30 sunrises.
If some of our viewers are watching this and saying, deja vu, didn't we just have a referendum question on this? Yes, we did just a few years ago, but the slimmest of margins failing to have daylight saving year round. So do you think it's worth putting it to Albertans again?
I think the government should probably have a little talk with the scientists and with industry to see what might fit best. This is why we elect them, is to do the research and make an informed decision. So, I'd love to be able to talk to all 4.5 million Albertans and tell them about this issue. But the government, and this is why we elect them to do that. It's going to be a nuanced issue, and it could be that we might need to do like what British Columbia does and what Ontario does, where we have multiple regions of the province on different time zones. So the people in the eastern part of Alberta, Lloydminster, Medicine Hat, Cold Lake, when they all voted to go to permanent daylight time to match what Saskatchewan's doing, and that actually would be good for them because of where they live. But people in the west, like those in Calgary, Edmonton, Grand Prairie, would actually do better with the more natural standard time. So we might actually have to look at doing different times for different parts of the province.
In the meantime, we're going to continue to have these discussions. Michael Antle with the University of Calgary, we appreciate you taking the time, no pun intended. Appreciate it.
Thank you.